Have you ever looked at your vegetable beds after a long, exhausting weekend of pulling weeds and thought to yourself, why am I doing all this heavy work for just a handful of miserable tomatoes? What if I told you that the back-breaking labor you are putting into your backyard is exactly what is destroying your harvest? Welcome to the grand illusion of traditional gardening. Today, we are going to uncover the single biggest mistake that almost every single gardener makes. It is a fatal error that turns your beautiful hobby into a second, unpaid, full-time job. I promise you, by the end of this video, you will learn a revolutionary secret that will allow you to triple the amount of fruit and vegetables you bring into your kitchen while cutting your physical labor down to almost zero. We are going to completely flip everything you thought you knew about soil, pruning, and plant care. I want you to drop the shovel, take a deep breath, and listen closely, because the truth about a high-yield garden is going to shock you. If your back constantly hurts from weeding, let me know in the comments right now, because your suffering is about to end forever. To truly understand why your garden is underperforming, we have to take a quick journey back in time. For hundreds of millions of years, wild plants, enormous fruit trees, and dense berry bushes have thrived perfectly across the planet without a single human being around to water them, prune their branches, or fertilize their roots. Nature has already perfected the ultimate system for growing massive amounts of food. Plants evolved to form brilliant, deeply complex relationships with the soil and the thousands of living creatures inside it. They learned how to trade natural sugars for vital minerals. But around 80 years ago, modern agriculture made a terrible shift. We took the harsh, chemical-heavy, high-labor methods of giant factory farming and blindly brought them right into our peaceful backyard gardens. We started treating our delicate raised beds and young fruit trees like machines on an assembly line. We forgot how to observe nature and started trying to dominate it instead. This drastic shift broke the natural biological engine of the soil. And that exact broken engine is the fundamental reason why you are working so hard today for such disappointing results. Let us start with the biggest illusion that has captured the minds of millions of gardeners around the world. It is the deep belief that a successful harvest absolutely requires breaking your back from dawn until dusk. Have you ever noticed how the hardest working gardener in your neighborhood often has the most miserable-looking tomato plants? This is the grand paradox of traditional gardening. For generations, we have been conditioned to believe that if we are not sweating, constantly digging and ruthlessly pulling weeds every single weekend, we are somehow failing our plants. But nature simply does not work like a busy factory floor. Think about a wild, ancient forest. Absolutely nobody goes deep into the woods to till the soil, apply bags of synthetic fertilizers, or spray chemical pesticides on the leaves. Yet, the forest thrives beautifully on its own. It produces massive amounts of biomass, juicy berries, and rich nuts every single year without human sweat. The fundamental mistake most of us make is trying to forcefully micromanage a complex ecosystem that already knows how to balance itself. When we force our rigid will onto the garden through sheer physical labor, we disrupt the fragile natural processes that create abundant harvests. We become the greatest obstacle to our own success. The moment you stop treating your backyard like a hostile battlefield, you will begin to see exactly how much precious energy you have been wasting for absolutely no good reason. Now let us talk about the great digging myth that has ruined more gardens than any summer drought ever could. Every single spring, millions of well-meaning people fire up their noisy rototillers or grab heavy spades to turn their soil completely upside down. We are constantly told this aerates the ground and prepares a perfect soft bed for new seeds. But what you are actually doing is destroying an incredibly complex underground city. Imagine a massive hurricane completely leveling your hometown every single year. That is exactly what a sharp shovel does to the delicate microscopic structure of your vegetable beds. Healthy soil is firmly held together by miles of invisible fungal threads and millions of tiny living organisms. These wonderful creatures create small air pockets and natural channels for rainwater to flow beautifully. When you aggressively dig and flip the dirt, you slice these essential fungal networks into tiny, useless pieces. You also bring thousands of dormant weed seeds directly to the surface, where the warm sunlight instantly wakes them up. This means, by digging, you are actually planting your own worst enemies. The smart, lazy gardener knows that the absolute best way to build perfect, fluffy soil is to simply leave it entirely alone and layer organic matter heavily on top. You must let the native earthworms do all the heavy lifting for you. To truly master the beautiful art of the lazy garden, you must deeply understand the bustling underground metropolis beneath your boots. Your garden soil is not just dead dirt, simply holding green plants upright. It is a highly active, living, breathing digestive system. Think of the delicate roots of your fruit trees and vegetables as tiny stomachs that desperately need pre-digested food. The microscopic bacteria, fungi, and earthworms are the brilliant master chefs preparing these daily meals. When a dead leaf falls or an old root rots, these tiny, tireless workers break it down into pure liquid nutrients that your tomatoes and apples can easily drink. This is a beautiful, highly advanced symbiotic trade system. The green plants actually pump sweet liquid sugars down into their roots to happily feed these microbes. In lovely exchange, the microbes mine the deep soil for essential minerals the plants cannot reach alone. It is a perfect, self-sustaining biological economy that has worked flawlessly for millions of years. But when we suddenly interfere with harsh chemical fertilizers or aggressive tilling, we fire all the hard-working chefs in the kitchen. The plants suddenly become entirely dependent on us to spoon-feed them every single week. A smart gardener focuses exclusively on feeding the rich soil life, knowing confidently that the living soil will then take perfect care of the plants without any extra physical effort from us. One of the most tragic sights in a typical modern backyard is completely bare, naked soil baking under the hot summer sun. This is a massive mistake that guarantees you will be trapped in a cycle of endless watering and weeding. Mother Nature absolutely hates naked dirt. In the wild, the earth is always perfectly covered by thick green plants, fallen brown leaves, or dense pine needles. Bare soil is effectively a severe open wound on the surface of the earth. When the hot sun beats down on unprotected dirt, all the precious moisture evaporates directly into the dry air within hours. The fragile top layer bakes into a hard, impenetrable crust that strongly repels future rain. Even worse, The beneficial microbes living just below the surface literally cook to death in the extreme heat. Without these crucial microbes, your expensive fruit trees and delicate vegetables will slowly starve, no matter how much water you pour on them. Furthermore, bare soil is a giant neon welcome sign for aggressive weeds. Nature tries to rapidly heal the open wound by sending fast-growing pioneer plants, which we call weeds, to quickly cover the bare surface. If you are constantly fighting a losing battle against weeds in dry soil, it is simply because you are stubbornly refusing to put a protective blanket over your garden beds. Covering the earth is the first rule of lazy gardening. The ultimate protective blanket for your garden is a thick layer of natural mulch, and it is the closest thing to absolute magic a lazy gardener will ever find. Mulching simply means covering your bare soil with natural materials like clean straw, shredded dry leaves, old grass clippings, or wood chips. When you apply a thick layer of mulch around your vegetable plants and fruit bushes, you instantly solve three massive problems at once. First, you dramatically reduce your watering chores. A good mulch acts exactly like a heavy thermal blanket, trapping the precious cool moisture deep in the earth where the roots actually need it. Second, it completely blocks the sunlight from reaching those annoying weed seeds buried in the dirt, stopping them from ever germinating. This alone will save you dozens of exhausting hours every single month. Third, and most importantly, as the mulch slowly breaks down over the long season, it gently feeds the busy earthworms and beneficial microbes we talked about earlier. It is essentially slow-release, natural fertilizer that you never have to mix or measure. Think of mulch as a beautiful forest floor right in your own backyard. By simply mimicking this natural woodland layer, you create a deeply resilient, heavily drought-resistant garden that practically takes care of itself, while you sit back and happily watch your harvests multiply. Let us address the miserable, back-breaking chore that makes most people completely abandon their gardening dreams forever. I am talking about the endless, deeply frustrating weeding treadmill. We have all been perfectly trained to believe that the moment a tiny weed appears, we must drop to our knees and violently rip it out by the roots. But this aggressive approach is actually a giant trap. When you forcefully pull a weed out of the dry ground, you violently disturb the soil structure and pull hidden weed seeds right back to the sunny surface. It is a vicious, never-ending cycle. Plus, many common weeds have incredibly deep taproots. If you snap the top off and leave a small piece of the root buried in the dirt, the weed will simply regrow thicker and stronger the very next week. You are essentially pruning the weeds and encouraging them to multiply. The lazy gardener understands that fighting weeds with brute force is a foolish game you can never truly win. Instead of fighting, we need to completely change our perspective on what these unwanted plants actually are. Weeds are simply nature perfectly trying to cover bare soil and pull deep nutrients up to the hungry surface. Once you understand their true biological purpose, you can start using their powerful energy to your great advantage instead of constantly fighting a losing war. Instead of ripping weeds out and dragging them away in heavy plastic bags, the smart gardener uses a brilliant, highly effective technique called chop and drop. This simple method will instantly revolutionize how you manage your raised beds and fruit tree borders. When you see a patch of tall weeds growing where you do not want them, simply take a sharp pair of garden shears and snip the weeds off right at the surface of the soil. Do not pull the roots. Just let the green tops fall directly onto the ground exactly where they grew. By leaving the roots safely in the earth, you avoid disturbing the precious soil structure and prevent new weed seeds from waking up. Those dead underground roots will slowly rot away, creating beautiful little water channels deep into the earth. Meanwhile, the green tops you chopped off act as an instant free layer of protective mulch. As these chopped leaves dry out and decompose, they return all the valuable minerals they mined directly back to your garden vegetables. You are literally turning your annoying weeds into premium high-quality fertilizer without doing any heavy lifting. The chop and drop method transforms a deeply frustrating chore into a quick, pleasant stroll through your garden, saving your aching back and feeding your plants at the exact same time. Another massive mistake that keeps gardeners trapped in a cycle of endless work is falling for the synthetic fertilizer fallacy. Every spring, garden centers push rows of brightly colored plastic bottles and bags of chemical powders, promising miracle growth and massive tomatoes. But pouring these synthetic chemicals onto your soil is exactly like feeding a human being nothing but sugary fast food. Sure, you will see a rapid, explosive burst of green growth at first, but this unnatural growth is highly stressful for the plant. It creates weak, watery plant tissues that become an absolute magnet for hungry pests and deadly diseases. Even worse, high doses of synthetic salts literally burn and kill the delicate beneficial microbes and helpful earthworms living in your soil. Once you kill the natural soil life, your garden becomes entirely addicted to those expensive chemical bottles. The soil loses its natural ability to hold water and naturally cycle essential nutrients. You are suddenly forced to constantly buy and apply more products just to keep your garden on life support. The lazy gardener completely rejects this expensive, high-maintenance chemical treadmill. We know that true, lasting plant health does not come from a plastic factory bottle. It comes entirely from building a rich, deeply healthy soil ecosystem that naturally provides everything a plant could ever desire. If synthetic fertilizers are the toxic fast food of the gardening world, then rich, dark compost is the ultimate gold standard currency. Building a simple compost pile is the single most profitable, least demanding activity you can ever do for your homestead. And contrary to popular belief, you do not need to constantly turn it, perfectly measure carbon ratios, or stress over temperatures. True lazy composting is incredibly simple. Just pile up your kitchen vegetable scraps, old autumn leaves, pulled weeds, and grass clippings in a quiet corner of your yard, and let time do the magical work. Nature knows exactly how to break down organic matter without your constant supervision. When you add a thick handful of dark finished compost to the base of your fruit trees or vegetable plants, you are delivering billions of helpful living microbes and a perfectly balanced buffet of essential minerals. Compost dramatically improves the texture of heavy clay and helps sandy soils hold on to precious moisture like a giant sponge. It is the ultimate cure for almost every single gardening problem you will ever encounter. By simply returning your organic waste back to the earth, you completely eliminate the need to ever buy another bag of commercial fertilizer, saving you serious money and heavy labor. Let us discuss the quiet epidemic that is secretly murdering vegetable plants across the globe. It is the dangerous habit of nervous overwatering. So many enthusiastic gardeners treat their daily watering routine like a strict religious duty. They stand out there every single evening, spraying a light mist of water over the leaves and the top inch of dirt. This feels productive, but it is actually highly destructive. When you constantly provide tiny sips of shallow water, your plants become incredibly lazy. They keep all their delicate roots right at the very surface of the soil, because they know you will bring them a daily drink. But the surface is the most dangerous, volatile place for a root to live. As soon as a really hot summer day arrives, and you happen to miss your watering chore, those shallow surface roots completely dry out, and the plant instantly wilts and dies. Furthermore, constantly damp surface soil is the perfect breeding ground for deadly fungal diseases and hungry slugs. By hovering over your plants and micromanaging their daily water intake, you're actually creating weak, highly vulnerable vegetables that demand your constant, unbroken attention. A smart gardener knows that plants need tough love to build resilience. The secret to building a truly drought-resistant, lazy garden is mastering the beautiful art of deep, infrequent watering. You want to train your vegetable roots and fruit trees exactly like an endurance athlete. Instead of giving them a tiny splash every single day, you must give them a massive, deep soaking once or twice a week, and then strictly leave them alone. Think of a thirsty traveler in the desert. If you want him to dig a deep well, you cannot keep handing him a small cup of water. When you soak the ground deeply, the water travels far below the hot surface. As the top layer of dirt slowly dries out over the next few days, the plant roots are forced to dive deep down into the cool, safe earth, chasing that hidden moisture. Plants with deep, strong root systems are completely bulletproof. They can easily survive massive heat waves, heavy winds, and forgotten watering days without dropping a single leaf. Combine this deep watering technique with a thick layer of protective mulch, and you will suddenly find yourself watering your garden only a few times a month instead of every single exhausting evening. You are teaching your garden to securely look after itself. Moving away from the vegetable beds, we need to urgently talk about the absolute panic that surrounds growing backyard fruit trees. The biggest mistake homesteaders make with their apples, cherries, and plums is falling victim to the pruning panic. Every winter, people march into their yards with sharp saws and aggressively hack away at their beautiful trees, believing that more cutting automatically equals more fruit. This is a tragic misunderstanding of tree biology. A fruit tree gathers vital energy through its green leaves and stores it safely in its roots and thick branches over the cold winter. When you severely chop off half the branches, the tree goes into an absolute state of sheer panic. It suddenly realizes it has lost its ability to feed itself. So, instead of calmly producing lovely flowers and sweet fruit, the stressed tree furiously pushes out hundreds of useless straight green branches, trying to quickly replace the leaves you stole from it. You end up with a massive, tangled mess of green wood and absolutely zero fruit for your kitchen. The harder you fight the tree, the harder the tree fights right back. The lazy gardener knows that a fruit tree naturally wants to produce fruit to reproduce. Our job is simply to gently guide it, not violently attack it with a saw. Smart pruning is not about aggressively dominating the fruit tree. It is about deeply understanding the peaceful flow of natural energy. Think of the sap inside a fruit tree exactly like the busy traffic in a large city. If you block a major highway, the cars will frantically reroute into chaotic side streets. When you do need to prune to remove dead wood or let warm sunlight into the center of the canopy, you must do it with gentle intention. The best time for light, lazy pruning is actually in the middle of late summer, not the freezing winter. Summer pruning gently calms the vigorous growth of the tree because you are quietly removing some of the solar panels before they send too much energy down to the deep roots. This strongly signals the tree to stop aggressively growing tall wood and start focusing its precious energy on creating fat, juicy fruit buds for the following year. By making just a few thoughtful, well-timed cuts in the warm summer breeze, you can completely eliminate the need for heavy, exhausting winter chainsaw work. You work perfectly with the natural energy cycle of the tree, ensuring maximum, delicious fruit production with absolute minimum physical effort. Another fundamental error that keeps gardeners trapped in a cycle of endless pest control and heavy labor is the dangerous obsession with the monoculture. We love to plant our vegetables in perfectly straight, mathematically precise rows. A long row of just cabbage, followed by a long row of just tomatoes. While this looks extremely neat and tidy to the human eye, it is an absolute disaster in the natural biological world. Planting a massive block of just one single crop is like ringing a giant dinner bell for every single pest in your neighborhood. If a cabbage moth is flying past your yard, a huge row of naked cabbage is an incredibly easy target. The bugs do not have to search. They just land and happily eat their way straight down the entire line. Furthermore, planting heavy-feeding crops right next to each other rapidly drains the local soil of specific nutrients, forcing you to constantly step in with heavy bags of extra fertilizer. Nature absolutely despises straight lines and monocultures. A wild meadow is a highly chaotic, beautiful mixture of hundreds of different plants growing fiercely together. The lazy gardener embraces this beautiful, productive chaos to naturally confuse pests and perfectly balance the soil. The magical solution to the monoculture disaster is embracing the ancient art of companion planting. This is where the lazy gardener truly becomes a brilliant conductor of a biological orchestra. Instead of planting a lonely row of tomatoes, you build a diverse, supportive community. You plant pungent basil and bright marigolds tightly around the base of your tomato plants. The strong, spicy smell of the herbs completely masks the scent of the tomatoes, hiding them perfectly from hungry flying pests. You plant tall sunflowers to create natural cooling shade for your delicate lettuce during the hot summer months. You let spreading squash vines wander freely under your sweet corn to act as a living, breathing green mulch that traps ground moisture and absolutely smothers weeds. When plants are allowed to grow in a mixed, diverse community, they physically protect each other, share deep soil resources, and dramatically reduce the amount of direct intervention you need to provide. You stop being the exhausted referee constantly fighting off bugs and weeds, and instead, you let the beautiful plant community police and defend itself naturally. Let us completely rethink the traditional pest control paradox that wastes so much time and money. When most people see a few aphids on their precious rose bushes or fruit trees, they immediately panic and reach for a spray bottle of harsh toxic chemicals. But here is the massive mistake. Broad-spectrum chemical pesticides do not just kill the bad bugs. They absolutely annihilate the good bugs, too. When you spray your garden, you're wiping out the innocent ladybugs, the tiny parasitic wasps, and the helpful predatory beetles. Because the bad pests usually reproduce much faster than the good predators, the aphids will quickly return in massive, unstoppable numbers a few weeks later. And this time, there will be absolutely no natural predators left to stop them. You have single-handedly destroyed the natural immune system of your own garden. You are now trapped in a miserable cycle where you must constantly buy and spray more toxic chemicals just to keep your garden alive. The lazy gardener refuses to play this dangerous, expensive game. We understand that a few holes in a leaf are perfectly fine. It means the garden is highly alive and actively functioning. Instead of furiously poisoning the backyard, the ultimate secret to lazy pest control is rolling out the red carpet for natural predators. You want to turn your homestead into an absolute paradise for the helpful bugs and hungry birds that love to eat your garden enemies. How do you do this? By simply planting a wide border of native nectar-rich flowers right near your vegetable beds. Flowers like dill, fennel, yarrow, and sweet alyssum act as high-energy fuel stations for tiny predatory wasps and beautiful ladybugs. When you provide them with a constant source of sweet nectar and safe shelter, these beneficial armies will happily move into your garden permanently. A single ladybug can confidently devour hundreds of destructive aphids in a single day. A small family of backyard birds will eagerly eat thousands of fat caterpillars all summer long. By spending just a little time planting a beautiful perimeter of flowers, you are officially hiring a massive unpaid army of natural exterminators to work for you 24 hours a day. You can proudly throw your toxic chemical sprayers straight into the garbage and let nature do the difficult killing for you. If you truly want to unlock the highest level of lazy gardening, you must strongly shift your focus away from high-maintenance annuals and heavily invest in the magical power of perennial plants. Most popular vegetables like tomatoes, cucumbers, and peppers are annuals. This means they live for only one short season. Every single spring, you have to start them from tiny seeds, nurse them in warm pots, prepare the beds, and gently transplant them. It is a massive amount of yearly labor. Perennials, on the other hand, are the holy grail of low-effort food production. These are incredible plants like thick asparagus, sour rhubarb, juicy raspberries, sturdy artichokes, and, of course, all your beautiful fruit trees. You dig a hole and plant a perennial exactly one time, and it powerfully rewards you with a huge harvest every single year for decades. Their deep, permanent root systems make them incredibly drought-resistant and totally immune to most common diseases. A smart homesteader dedicates a large, permanent section of their property exclusively to these long-lasting powerhouse plants. Once established, a perennial food bed requires almost zero maintenance, other than a quick layer of autumn mulch and harvesting the wonderful bounty. One of the most useless, time-consuming features of the modern yard is the perfectly manicured bright green grass lawn. We spend endless hours mowing, edging, watering, and heavily fertilizing a patch of useless grass that produces absolutely zero food for our families. The lazy gardener looks at a traditional grass lawn and sees a massive waste of precious potential. Imagine if you took just a small fraction of that flat green space and slowly transformed it into a thriving, beautiful fruit tree guild. A guild is a permaculture concept where you plant a central fruit tree and closely surround it with highly supportive companion plants. You might plant a sweet cherry tree, and directly beneath it, you plant deep-rooted comfrey to pull up hidden minerals, fragrant garlic chives to deeply confuse digging rodents, and beautiful clover to naturally pull free nitrogen straight from the air to feed the tree roots. This creates an incredibly beautiful, wild-looking food forest that requires absolutely no mowing and no chemical fertilizer. By slowly replacing your useless grass with self-sustaining, productive plant communities, you drastically cut down your weekly yard chores and massively increase your food independence. The final and perhaps the most important secret of the truly successful lazy gardener is mastering the profound art of simple observation. Traditional gardening teaches us that we must always be actively doing something, digging, pulling, cutting, or spraying. We feel completely guilty if we're just standing there. But the absolute truth is that nature operates on a timeline of months and years, not frantic minutes and hours. The most valuable work you can ever do in your backyard is to simply grab a warm cup of coffee, slowly walk outside, and quietly watch. Watch exactly where the deep shadows fall in the late afternoon. Observe which specific plants the busy bees prefer to visit first. Notice how the ground naturally holds water after a heavy summer rain. When you spend your time quietly observing instead of aggressively interfering, you begin to deeply understand the unique microclimates and subtle rhythms of your specific piece of land. You will stop trying to force sun-loving plants to grow in the dark shade. You will naturally stop watering spots that are already perfectly damp. This quiet, peaceful observation allows you to finally work in perfect harmony with nature, making your garden an absolute place of deep rest and incredible abundance, rather than a place of endless, exhausting toil. The greatest turning point in your journey as a gardener will be the exact moment you finally realize that the natural world is not your enemy. The fatal mistake of treating your garden like a sterile factory floor, demanding deep tilling, heavy chemical feeding, and constant aggressive weeding is exactly what has been holding back your harvests and draining your physical energy. When you finally stop fighting the soil and start actively supporting the incredible underground food web, everything completely changes. By simply embracing the magic of thick, natural mulch, utilizing the brilliant chop and drop method for weeds, deeply watering only when necessary, and relying on beneficial insects instead of toxic sprays, you are essentially stepping out of the way and letting millions of years of perfectly evolved biology do the heavy lifting for you. This smart, relaxed approach will not only save you hundreds of hours of back-breaking labor every single season, but it will dramatically multiply the amount of fresh, delicious, organic food you bring into your home. Your garden will absolutely transform from a stressful weekend chore into a peaceful, self-sustaining sanctuary of massive abundance. Thank you so much for watching and learning how to garden smarter, not harder. If this video helped you rethink your approach to growing food, please make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and share it with a friend who works way too hard in their yard. Now, I have a quick question for you to answer in the comments below. What is the absolute first traditional gardening habit you're going to completely drop this season to save your back and boost your harvest? Let us discuss it down there.